Is any better at this than you are?
That's fine. Take a deep breath.
Give him hell at the end. Good luck to you.
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here.
Brett, be affirmative. You told me to get on. Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down. I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Record. Hell yeah. 11 got it.
Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day.
Great work, my man. Great work. Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
Therefore, great job, guys.
And welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark. I appreciate you tuning in for another weekly edition of Racing in the Draft. We are going live to Phoenix Raceway for I feel like we were just here. We were 4 months ago, 4 races ago, we were at Phoenix crowning the championship. Wyatt, what's up, buddy? You maxed out the lug nut in the mini max 300 lineups coming up. Oh, you're going big this week. I thought you were saying that you hit the lug nut last week. I was like, wow, even better. Either way, yeah, we've got some data to go through tonight. I'm going to try to make this as quick and as painless as possible. But I have literally spent, the better half of the last 5 hours digging through the data for this race because NASCAR thought it would be cool to have 2 different types of tires here. A primary tire that's very similar to what they ran here 4 months ago, and we're going to throw the option tire, which is what they ran as a soft tire at Martinsville at the end of last year, or the option tire that they ran at North Wilkesboro and Richmond. But I now have got a website that I can get to and actually see all of the raw lap data times. Now, it doesn't tell me whether they were on the option tire or the primary tire, but you can tell very quickly from lap times which tire they happen to be on. So after going through all of the laps and everything, we've got a lot of information. But before we get into all of that data and fun information that I'm not sure is really going to make a hill of beans, but we've got the data to look at it. Let's go back and look at the Eco Park Automotive Grand Prix from COTA, where Christopher Bell gets win number 2 in a row. What a start to the year Christopher Bell is having. And Andrew, hey, what's up, buddy? Hit good betting Almirola, hoping to keep it up with a cup race tomorrow. Yeah, Almirola, number one, Almirola has always been decent at Phoenix. He's also really good at short tracks. So when we go back to Martinsville or Richmond or any of those types of things, if Almirola is in the Xfinity race, you almost have to put him in your lineup. So yeah, and man, that was all Justin Nygaard's race until that caution came out. It's crazy. We've literally had the ARCA race, which ended the same way. Literally with 2 guys coming to the finish and one guy hitting the other to score the win. I don't think we're going to see that tomorrow in the Cup race, but you never know. Typically, the Cup race they are a little less willing to use the chrome horn to speak. You got lucky, yeah. Yes and no. Almirola was the fastest car on the track. The thing is, Allgaier had gotten out to a 1.2 to 1.3 second lead, and was just able to maintain. But Almirola was coming. If he didn't have all that distance to make up, he would have made it a real race. But since there was a caution and they bunched everybody up, it didn't turn out well for AJ Allmendinger. Either way, the Eco Park race at COTA from last weekend, for the most part, went kind of the way I thought it was going to, except for, I did not see Kyle Busch going out and leading almost half of the laps. That was a little shocking to me. Other than when you look back at the data at COTA, Kyle Busch is a top 10, top 5 throughout the day driver. His finishes have kind of turned out the way they did last weekend, where he finishes in the 5 to 10 range. But I didn't expect him to go out and lead as many laps as he did. But I definitely expected Christopher Bell to run well, William Byron. They both ran well the year prior. Chris Buescher is always a contender when we go to these road courses. Alex Bowman has come close to winning at COTA a couple of times and won at Chicagoland. Now, the big surprise was Noah Gragson doing as well as he did. He's not shabby on the road courses, but in the next-gen car, he has not been as good. Maybe we're starting to see a little bit of a turnaround from Noah, a little more focus. He's, in my opinion, with a better team, even though it is kind of a newer car, but he does have an amazing crew chief. So I'm expecting some decent things out of Noah this year, as long as he stays off of social media. But, the other drivers that did not make the optimal lineup, expected Shane Van Gisbergen to be there, expected Tyler Reddick to be there. Riley Herbst, I thought was a really good pick. Justin Haley has run road courses very well. Chase Elliott, of course, has always run road courses very well. He started third and finished fourth, but that tells you what the place differential really does, or the somewhat dominator type of laps that you can get in, what that means. Brad Keselowski, I did not see that coming. He has not raced well on road courses in the next-gen era, and the poor guy had to be put on a stretcher and pumped full of fluids after the race. Michael McDowell is a really good road course racer, and Todd Gillen started 10th and finished 10th. I did not see that coming from him either. Optimal lineup challenge after 3 races. We now have 2 drivers who have gotten into the optimal lineup twice, Alex Bowman and Christopher Bell. Of course, Christopher Bell having the 2 wins definitely helps out with that. All right, that's enough from COTA. We'll revisit it when we go back to Mexico, if we go to Mexico. Supposedly there's rumor that if Mexico doesn't allow us to come, that they're going to go to the Daytona road course as a backup. But I think they'll end up going to Mexico. All right, we are headed to Phoenix, out in the desert, where it happened to rain this weekend, like a monsoon type of rain and snow and everything else. But that's all cleared out. It was a cooler day today, but it's going to be warmer tomorrow. It's going to be kind of in the 70s and 80s. So the option tire, I think, will be something that will be very interesting to keep an eye on. Either way, the track length here is 1.022 miles, 11 degrees in turns 1 and 2, and 9 degrees in 3 and 4. The race length is 312 laps. We finally have a race where Dominator points will absolutely come into play with 218.4 Dominator points, fast laps of 140.4, and laps led of 78. So we definitely will be targeting at least 1, if not 2 Dominators for tomorrow's race. Other tracks to compare to: Richmond, Martinsville, Phoenix, Iowa. And it's amazing how much Richmond and Iowa are race very similar to Phoenix, Richmond especially. And Iowa was designed after Richmond. So those 3 tracks are all very similar, and you can definitely look back at the history from there. And because Martinsville's short and flat, we can also look at that. The optimal lineups from Phoenix for the past 4 races. You also have to remember that the fall race at Phoenix is the championship race, and typically the 4 drivers who are in that that are going for the championship in the final 4, most of the time the other drivers will let those guys go. They won't fight them very hard. They will let them go up and fight each other hard. But typically, like a Bubba Wallace, Daniel Suarez is not going to go up and try to fight with Christopher Bell or Joey Logano. I mean, Bell was not one of them, but Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, I think it was William Byron, and I can't remember who the fourth driver was that was in the championship last year. But I mean, it was Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney's to lose, and Joey Logano got that win. So you have to remember that when we're making optimal lineups, and we're looking at optimal lineups from the fall race at Phoenix. Now, the spring race is definitely a different story because it's pretty much go get them. And that's why we see more Dominator points coming from the fall race than we do from the spring race. And then, the main thing that we try to look at is what are the points that we're looking at trying to get. And, on the bottom end for the cheaper drivers, it's somewhere in the 40s is kind of what we're looking at, where the higher end guys are 55 points and above. And that's kind of what you're kind of separating this for, is you're kind of looking for 2 Dominator or start in the top 5, finish in the top 5 type of drivers. You're looking for 2 mid-tier drivers that can come through the field, finish in the top 10. And then we're kind of looking for 2 cheap options that will get us about 40 to 45 points. Because as you can see, they don't have a whole lot of Dominator points when it comes to it. Noah Gragson and Todd Gillen don't have a whole lot of fast laps, if any at all. Same thing down here, Todd Gillen and Michael McDowell. Very few laps led or fast laps. Same thing once again over here. I mean, you got J.J. Yaley, who was at $5,000, one of the cheaper guys for the fall race last year, or 2023. No fast laps. Michael McDowell with no fast laps or laps led, but place differential, and they were inexpensive. So they fit 2 of the real expensive guys, 2 of the mid-tier guys, and then you had 2 cheapies. And that's been very consistent for the last 4 races that we've had at Phoenix. So we've got, 5,800, a 5,400, a 5,800, and a 5,000, a 6,800, a 63, and a 72, a 59, a 67, and we still had salary cap left over. But it's just because it's just kind of how it falls. And so you're looking at almost 3 different tiers and finding 2 drivers from each of those tiers when we're kind of building these lineups. And that's what's kind of been consistent with Phoenix and with Richmond also. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're looking at stuff. And when we're looking at this fun little chart that I always like to look at on where are the points coming from, not necessarily who the drivers are, but where are the points coming from in their starting positions? And do they finish in the top 15 in points? So this is the bottom line of the 15 points is 32, 33, 31, 34. So anything that we think we can get above 30 points for a driver is somebody that we can actually Family guy just texted me, Matt, I think you're now online. Say hi to everyone. And tell your wife hello also. But that's kind of, so the average point total for the top 15 in points, and that's kind of where you kind of need to fall, especially if you're trying to find those 2 guys that are the cheapos, the cheaper options. Can they get to that 32 to 40 point range? And that's kind of what we're trying to find. But the majority, we don't have a whole lot of drivers that make the top 15 that start 31st or worse. So the guys that are starting really far in the back are not typically the ones we look at. Now we definitely have some options back here. You've got Alex Bowman, Daniel Suarez, Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson, all starting in the 30s that I think really will come into play here. We've got some pretty good options from guys that are starting in the 20 range, 20 through 30th range. Ross Chastain, Chase Briscoe, maybe Todd Gillen, as we saw in the optimal lineups just a few minutes ago. Todd Gillen had made a lot of those optimal lineups, so Todd Gillen is definitely somebody that we could keep an eye on. And then who do we think in the top 10 is going to number one, race in the top 10, stay in the top 10, lead laps, and have fast laps. Well, we've seen William Byron, we've seen Joey Logano. I mean, Penske here at Phoenix in the fall is almost unstoppable. And that still carries over to spring. They're not as dominant. It's much more Joe Gibbs racing that is a little more dominant when we come in the spring. And then the fall, it flips to Penske. And then Hendrick is kind of mixed or match. But ever since the next-gen era, Hendrick has not been as good at Phoenix. Now, that may change, but typically since the next-gen era, it has been much more Penske and Gibbs are the two top-tier teams. Now, we've got some different options, and we've got some new teams that are starting to make some waves, so we may want to kind of keep an eye on them, and we'll get into those options as we get into it. But this is kind of an interesting breakdown of kind of where the points mostly are coming from when we're looking. And the other thing you can look at is the spring races, because I said the spring race is the same amount of length, it's the same track, but it just ends up getting raced differently because there's no championship for that everybody is racing. So as you can see, nobody's starting 31st or worse in both spring races. Where you get the 31st or worst guys in the fall race. Now, I think because of the qualifying, I think some of these guys back here in the 30s, I think, have definitely a much better shot for this spring race. So I'm not sure that this trend holds true this year. Okay, let's get into it. Driver by driver breakdown. As you can see, I skipped over what I usually have in that spot, which are the practice times and practice laps, who was fast, and then who was slowest. Because I'll just give you a glimpse into what we're going to look at. Here is the practice laps with the soft tire and the primary tire, the soft being the option tire. But before we get to this, let's just take a look at our regular screen, kind of break this down for anybody that's new and just now watching. Hold on one second. All right. So our comparison tracks, we compared the last 5 races at Phoenix because we race there twice a year. Sometimes if the track is only once a year, we'll throw in some other like style tracks. But because we race Phoenix enough, we're using the last 5 races here. Oh, typo. That's supposed to be fall of 2022. But either way, Christopher Bell, the price in Draftkings is $11,000. He is the most expensive driver. He is starting in the 11th position. That's where he qualified. They did change qualifying up, and I'd forgotten that they were doing that this year. They only did 1 round of qualifying. They didn't do the second round, which I actually really, really like. It's literally everybody go run as fast as you can, and we're going to set the lineups from that. So, either way, Christopher Bell qualified in 11th. His practice speeds were 9th in the single lap. So this does not take into account, and I can tell you their fastest laps were with the option soft tire. That was across the board for everyone except for the young lady who's starting in last. But congratulations on making the race. We'll get to her at the very end. I'm not worried about that at all. She did not, as far as I could tell, she did not change to the soft option tire. I think she was just trying to, it was the first time she'd ever driven a cup car. So, yeah, good luck. I mean, she's drove Indy, she's driven some Formula E type stuff and those types of things. So, I mean, she's got experience racing. She just doesn't have experience in NASCAR and Cup Series driving. So, I think this is a little bit more than she needs to be biting off. She probably should have done truck or Xfinity first, but hey, if you've got the sponsorship and you got the money, you go for it. All right, Christopher Bell, starting 11th. Practice speeds. Like I said, this is with the option tire. Everybody's fastest laps were with the option tire. Everybody's fastest 10-lap consecutive runs were on the option tire. So I'm not going to continue to repeat that. Just the practice speeds, fastest laps were on option tires. But Christopher Bell did 66 total laps. That included both tires, so that will include both tires. That is not just one tire. and his 10-lap consecutive average was 30th. Little concerning until when we get to the next page, you kind of see what that actually means. But Christopher Bell did win and dominate last spring here at Phoenix. Other than that, he still finishes fairly well here with an 11.6 average finish. He's got 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 4 top 20s, a 54.5 Draftkings average over the course of the 5 races that we're comparing to. The fall race from last year was the last race they had here, and he did finish in the 5th position. His total experience at Phoenix is 10 total starts with 1 win, 2 top 5s, 6 top 10s, 7 top 20s, and a 14.3 average finish. The 2 checkered flags, of course, are his 2 wins on the season, and I probably would think that this will get much fuller as the time progresses. All right, let's get into much more of the data on his practice speed and practice laps. So his fastest 10-lap consecutive run probably did not come from the first, second, or third lap, because you could see this spike here is much higher than most other ones, which probably means when he went out on the softer tire, he had to check up or slow up for another car, or maybe he lost the rear end a little bit, or he overdrove a corner. Either way, this is kind of an interesting indication on how practices go, and that's why sometimes you can't fully trust what their entire package for practice is, because you don't know some of these anomalies. Like even over here on the primary tire, he gets to a 29.5 lap time, which is just horrendously slow, as you'll see as we kind of go through this with everyone else. But the option tires, of course, is this orange, and then the other color is the primary tire. So for 26 laps with the option tire, if we take the accumulation of all of the speed up until lap 26, comparing the primary tire against the option tire, he would have gained 4.17 seconds over those 26 laps. Well, if they're running lap times in the 28-second range, well, he's over the course of that time, he's either way, he gains 4 seconds. So he could have a 4-second lead if everybody else in the field had the primary tire and he had the option tire. He could potentially have a 4-second lead, which at Phoenix is, it's a long way. It's a quarter of a lap almost. No, it's not that far. It's a straightaway of distance. So the option tire is definitely going to play. And actually a 4.1 second differential for Christopher Bell is one of the slow. That's probably about the average. We have some guys that had 11, 12, 13, 14 second faster times on the option tire. What caused that? Once again, you're out on the track with 36, 37 other drivers. So sometimes you get these little anomalies of you just hit a slower car at the wrong time, or you just misjudged. So either way, we'll have each of these for each driver. We may not go into as much detail. I always like to go into detail on the first driver, so that way when we get to the next one, you'll kind of have an understanding of what we're looking at. But yes, so all this data is what I had to do, and they finished practicing at 4 o'clock today. So within about 6 hours, I got all the data put into spreadsheets and got this printed up nice and neat. Once again, is it going to mean a hill of beans? I don't know. I think history and overall speed is going to come more into play. Kind of very similar to what we've seen. We're going to have a couple of guys that'll be comers and goers because of the option tires. Like we saw at Richmond last year, we saw Daniel Suarez put on option tires and drive from like 30th to 1st, and then still got like a 2-second lead. So we'll have some of those drivers do that. Now the question is, when do cautions fall? When do teams decide to put this on? They can put them on to start. So it's this could be a very fascinating race to watch and see what strategies these different crew chiefs have. Okay, either way, Ryan Blaney, 10,800, starting in 12th. If you look at these stats, holy moly, you want to talk about... They're almost going to need to name another road for Ryan Blaney at Phoenix like they did for Kevin Harvick. He doesn't have a win in the last 5 races, but all 5 races he's finished in the top 5. All of these 5 races he's finished in the top 5. 26.2 average finish, and he finished second in the fall race last year. 18 total starts, 9 top 5s. Half the time he's finished in the top 5. 12 of 18 he's finished in the top 10, and 14 out of 18 he's finished in the top 20 for a 7.6 average finish. This is Ryan Blaney's absolute best track. So starting in 12th, we do have some place differential here. Now, will the tire strategy come into play? I don't know. Maybe. I'm sure it will, but I still think Ryan Blaney's going to be really good here. Blaney has the best combination of driver rating and fastest laps at Phoenix in the next-gen era. He's definitely... Oh, yeah, absolutely, Matt. This is his best track. The second best track is probably Martinsville, which is crazy at the end of the season. If Ryan Blaney just makes it to the final 8, more than likely he's going to win Martinsville and then show up at Phoenix and race really well. Question is it an odd year, and is Joey Logano in that group? If it's an odd year or an even year, then it's Joey Logano's to lose. Either way, so this is a 30-lap differential, and as you can see, he was 4.23 seconds gained, and Christopher Bell was 4.1 seconds over 26 laps. So this is kind of an interesting comparison on what these speeds end up looking like for each driver and how many laps they ran on the option tire compared to laps that they ran with the other tire. As you can see, it really starts to even out at about lap 30. The option tire and the primary tire become about equalized, and my guess is probably by lap 40-45, the option tire is really going to start to give up, and that's when the primary tire will start to come back to other drivers. So that's kind of going to be the thing, is if you can find a short enough run and catch everyone else off guard, you can make a run to the front. And then maybe if you get lucky with cautions, you can come in and swap out. It's gonna be interesting to watch the comers and goers. Kyle Larson, 10,500, starting in 17th. In the last 5 races here, he's also raced very, very well. 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 5 top 20s, a 6.8 average finish. Still nowhere close to what Ryan Blaney is, but he did finish 4th in the race last year. He does have the one win where he won the championship in 2021. And he's got an 11.1 average finish. And this is probably the best comparison of primary tire to option tire. Really significant difference throughout the run. And as you can see, towards the end of this run, which ended up being 29 laps, he would have gained 15.6 seconds over his normal tire run. And that's huge because that's almost half a lap that he would put on himself, comparing him to himself. So this one is a huge swing, and it really shows the difference. And it shows how well he's able to manage these tires because they both incrementally kind of creep up together. Now, my guess is, like I said, we get to lap 45, and we're going to see a switch over where the option tire really falls off, and you're going to end up in the 29.5 to 30 second range, where I think the primary tire stays about in this area and stays pretty consistent. You like Larson tomorrow? Yeah. Larson starting in 17th, ton of potential place differential. He's really good on that option tire, and he's got one of the best crew chiefs when it comes to strategy. And the war room back at Hendrick is really, really good. But most are. I mean, these war rooms that they've got back in Charlotte, they've got, 40, 50 guys sitting around computers doing exactly what we do and just sitting here crunching numbers and crunching data. But they're doing it almost instantaneously and looking at fuel strategies and tire strategies and when to do this and what everybody else is doing. You want to talk about what AI is going to probably end up doing for this sport when it comes to that type of stuff is going to be very, very impressive and pretty cool to watch, especially in those war rooms. I'm sure they're already probably using some AI in those scenarios, just because AI could crunch the data so much faster than humans can. So, but Joey Logano, 10,200, starting in the outside pole position. He had the pole position all the way to the last driver until the last driver went. We'll find out who that is in a second. If you haven't heard, we'll keep you on suspense. But Joey Logano, in practice, was 11th in single lap, 7th in 10-lap consecutive average. Joey has 2 wins, both of them championship wins, here at Phoenix. And in that 5-race period, he's got 2 top 5s, 2 top 10s. So guess what? Even number year, championship race, Joey Logano wins. It's just what it is. Other than that, it's not as good. It's a 13th place average finish. He finished first, of course, in the fall. But 32 total starts. He's got 3 wins, 8 top 5s, 16 top 10s, 23 out of 32, and the top 20 with an 11.5. It's not that he's shabby. But starting in second and it not being a fall race, more than likely he's going to fall back a few spots if averages run like they are. So Joey Logano may actually be starting a little far up front, but Penske's also extremely good at this track, so I would not sleep on Joey Logano either. I'll probably fade off of Joey more so than the field. My guess in this, he'll probably be 15 to 20% owned, especially since he just won here in the fall 4 months ago. But it's a odd year and it's in the spring. So, I don't know. Numbers are weird, but they tell a story. And will that story come true tomorrow? We'll see. But I'm going to fade off of Joey Logano. I think he's going to be 15 to 20% owned. I'll probably have him closer to the 10, maybe 15% ownership range. And I run about 80 different lineups. So when I say I'm going to have somebody in about 10%, I'll probably have them in, 8 of those 80 lineups. So that kind of gives you an idea of where I think I'll be running Joey or other drivers. And if we look at his practice times, there was not a huge gain in the soft tire for Joey. I mean, he was definitely gaining, and it looks like probably about a 10th per lap. So 33 total laps between the two, and he had a 7.554 second differential. Now remember, he also won the North Wilkesboro option tire race, and he never went to the primary tire. He literally ran the entire race on the option tire. North Wilkesboro was a little bit different. They just paved the track. It was super grippy, and they just never had any fall off. So that is one of the big differences. William Byron, man, I tell you, William Byron and Christopher Bell have just been on a heater this year so far. Can we see that continue? Very good possibility. William Byron, $10,000, starting from the pole position, literally got Joey Logano. He was the last one to go out, and he just beat Joey. But William Byron's got 1 win here in the last 5 races, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 5 top 20s. These guys that are up front they're good, and they stay up front. 6.4 average finish. Finished 3rd here in the fall race last year. 14 total starts with 1 win and a 10.5 average finish. I mean, William Byron or Joey Logano could easily finish well here. Honestly, I think that we could see another just either William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell type of shootout at the end of this thing, with Kyle Larson coming in 4th. It's just that tight with these guys. So I think William Byron easily could go out, lead a ton of laps, stay up front, finish up front, and be one of the two definitely to take And if we look at his practice speeds, he ran more laps on the option tire, less laps on the primary tire. But there was not a huge differential here between these two. He really kind of kept pretty close with his times throughout. I mean, he was a 27 point, just a little over 27.2, and he finished up with a 26.8. So only probably a 1.2, 1.3 second loss of time over the course of 30 laps. Now that's going to continue to go up much more greatly where the primary tire is going to flatten out. It's just the way these tires are built. They level out at some point where the softer tire is just going to continue to degrade. I think you probably could run 100 laps on the primary tire. I think realistically, before you end up with heat issues and blistering and potentially blowouts with the softer tire, that's probably going to happen around lap 60, 65. Even at that point, you're probably going to be well into the 30-second range, and you're just going to get your lunch eaten by the primary tire guys. So there's a pro and a con to it. If you need a quick, short run, definitely go with the option. But if you're trying to go for a long run, stay with that primary. We could easily see somebody literally never put the option tire on and win this race. It's very possible. Doubtful, but very possible. Denny Hamlin, 9,700, starting in the 10th position. He was 7th in the single lap practice, 19th in 10-lap consecutive average. Does not have a top 5 here in the last 5 races, but has a 12.2 average finish. Not bad, not great. Finished 11th here in the fall race. He does have 2 wins for his full history here. And he's got a 10.7 average finish. I think he kind of potentially is going to finish where he starts. I just don't know if Denny Hamlin is going to be able to go up and shoot out with Ryan Blaney and William Byron and Christopher Bell. This one is not in Denny Hamlin's best track wheelhouse. He's much better at the 1.5 miles or mile and a third type of, a Darlington. He's pretty decent at Richmond, but he also grew up in Richmond. He's raced on Richmond for a long time. But, the Poconos, Michigans, those are more Denny Hamlin's wheelhouse. And as we see, his option tire, he ran almost 40 laps on the option tire, and you can see he was definitely getting upper into the mid 29 second range. The primary tire didn't fall off quite as much once he kind of got about 13 or 14 laps in. But over 21 laps, he did gain 4.893 seconds. So, like I said, I don't know what this data is going to actually prove because we don't do this a whole lot. So does it translate to how well somebody's going to finish? I think it's more, but I think it's a way that we can kind of tell to see how well the car is set up and how balanced it is. I actually like Denny Hamlin's trajectory here. It seems to be very even and symmetrical when the tires are falling off. And we saw the same thing with Kyle Larson. We didn't see a whole lot of ups and downs. Which means they were able to control their traffic. They were able to control the racetrack. The car handled very well and very well balanced. So I think there is some data points in here to look at because of the consistency on their lap times. Chase Elliott, 9,500, starting in the 6th position. Pretty good starting spot for Chase Elliott. His practice speeds were not bad, 20th and 17th on 10-lap. This has not been Chase Elliott's best track, to say the least. He does have the one win in 2020 when he won the championship. It was here at Phoenix. He finished 8th in the fall race, 10th place average finish, starting in 6th. I think Chase Elliott may get overlooked. So Matt, if you're listening, I think Chase Elliott could be somebody who gets a little bit sneaky, and he might be a little bit under-owned. I'm thinking Chase probably, because of everybody else, we're going to start to run into a salary cap issue on these high-end drivers. And I think the Ryan Blaney's and Christopher Bells and Larsons and Byrons are going to eat up a lot of the share. And I think an Elliott and Denny Hamlin to probably lose out on some of that share because people are going to go, well, I'd much rather have William Byron than Chase Elliott, or one of those guys up there. So you have to kind of pick and choose, and Chase Elliott could easily be one of those that kind of get people go, I'll skip it because, he wasn't super fast in practice. He's got a 17.8 average finish. He only has the one win. Out of 17 total starts, only 5 top 5s. And he's starting in 6. I mean, I'm probably going to lose some place differential here. But if he goes out and knocks it out of the park, then you could easily get him as a sleeper. I don't think he's a full-on sleeper, but I think he definitely could easily be somebody who is in the 10 to 12% ownership range. And if we look at his practice speeds, his option tire was not super fast. And he only ran 20 laps. He only gained 1.279 seconds. But his primary tire was very consistent and didn't fall off near what some of these other drivers have. He kind of started down on a 27.5 and ended at a 28.8. So it's about consistent, but this line is very, very telling that it's nice and fluid. It's not a bunch of jagged, kind of like this option tire was. But once again, that could be traffic that he ran into. So Tyler Reddick, 9,200, starting in the 9th position. Tyler Reddick could easily be one of those also that kind of gets overlooked for some of the more expensive guys. But Tyler Reddick's practice speeds were really, really good. He was probably one of the most consistent. There's one other driver who's more consistent, but Tyler Reddick was 3rd in single lap, 2nd in 10-lap consecutive average. He did 75 total laps, which is one of the higher lap totals. The other driver we'll talk about also had a really large lap total count. And he's starting in 9th. He finished 6th in the fall. He has much improved on short tracks. Tyler Reddick could also be another kind of sleeper pick. Other than his practice speeds were really good. And once again, if we look at his lap times, they're very consistent. It took 33 laps and he only gained 3 seconds on himself over himself. But, started lower 27s and ended at 28.5, 28.6. So his fall off was about the same as everyone else's, but he was very, very fluid and very well balanced. So I do like the Tyler Reddick lines that we're seeing here from his practice speeds. Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe, I was talking with Matt earlier, and we're like, who might be sleeper picks? And I was like, I really am going to be interested to see how the guys from Stewart-Haas Racing that are now at different places, how they end up racing now that they're not with Stewart-Haas. Because I think Josh Berry could be a great pick. I think Chase Briscoe could be a great pick. Chase Briscoe has a win here. He won the first race of the next-gen era car in Stewart-Haas. He knows he runs really pretty well here at a 14.6 average finish, and that was in Stewart-Haas equipment. But his practice speeds were just chaotic. They had some brake issues. If you watch practice, they had some struggles with some brake issues early in practice, and I think they were kind of fighting that. I would not be surprised if tomorrow we see that Chase Briscoe has replaced a lot of their braking systems and will start from the rear. Is that going to make much of a difference? No, probably not. Starting in 30th, you're only going to lose 6 spots. So I'm not worried if we do build lineups and all of a sudden they say, Chase Briscoe's going to the back because he made adjustments. That's fine. Because he was very inconsistent in practice. His primary tire was just awful. And he was pretty quick on the option tire. He had 14 laps and gained 10, almost 11 seconds on himself. That's a huge difference. Now, he started on the primary tire and switched over to the option tire in practice. On the second run, he was on the option tire. So, huge gains, and they also made some pretty sizable adjustments to the car. So that would also skew that. So pretty big jump for Chase Briscoe in practice. It's a little inconsistent, but starting in 30th, I don't mind that at all. Big place differential. Same thing with Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain's got a win here. He won the fall of 2023 when Brian Blaney won his championship. Brian Blaney's just the bridesmaid at Phoenix. That's just all there is to it. Maybe he can get a win. Ross Chastain, 8,800, starting in 24th. He was 18th in single lap, 4th in 10-lap consecutive average. He's been a little hit or miss at Phoenix, but he's been a little bit more consistent over time. Let's look at his practice speeds. Very consistent, and the fall off is about the same as everyone else. But 31 laps, he gained 5.3 seconds on himself. And like I said, I really like when the trajectory stays pretty tight and pretty consistent, even with the difference in tires. But you can see definitely that the option tire is a much faster tire. Like I said, I think probably the max differential that you'll get out of these tires is about lap 40. Kyle Busch at 8,600 starting in 15th. His practice speeds were 21st in single lap, 18th in 10-lap consecutive average. 16.6 average finish. Not great in the next gen era at Phoenix. He finished 21st here in the fall race last year. He just had a miserable year last year. But we're starting to see some trends head in the right direction for Kyle Busch. I hope he gets a win this year. I think he's too good not to get a win. But his practice speeds, this was the first one I did, and I was like, okay, I'm putting too much time into this because I actually put down what their lap times were. And I was like, okay, that's too much. I'll never get done. You won't have my video until tomorrow night after the race is over. But 20 lap gain of 3.135 seconds over 20 laps. Starting in 15th, I think there's other drivers I would rather take than Kyle Busch. So Kyle Busch may end up getting a little bit overlooked, other than he ran so well last week. Some of the people who aren't spending a lot of time digging into details and information may take Kyle Busch. Chris Buescher, 8,400, starting in 13th. He was 5th in single lap, 8th in 10-lap consecutive average. If you look at his average finishes, they're really pretty good here at Phoenix. 10.4 average finish. He finished 9th here in the fall race last year. And if we look at his practice speeds, I mean, they're pretty consistent. Once again, they why isn't my mouse showing? There it is. It follows that nice line again. Like I said, that's consistency and really hitting your marks and really kind of understanding what's going on. So 4.591 gain over 22 laps. I like Chris Buescher. Ty Gibbs starting in 34th. He just absolutely blew a corner in qualifying. I remember watching it and going, oh, that's not going to be good. That pushed him all the way back to 34th. Now, this is not one of his better tracks. He tends to end up getting into everyone else's messes. So if he can keep the car clean, he probably will have a very good finish. Tons of place differential, but there's a risk to it. He's only got one top 20 out of 4 starts. The other times he's finished 40th or back there. So 23rd place average finish. I mean, he's got a win here in the Xfinity Series. But, definitely somebody to definitely take a look at. Look, his practice speeds were a little erratic, to say the least, which makes me think that he's pushing the car a little bit harder than he should. And I think that's kind of why he ends up getting himself into trouble, because he ends up pushing the car too hard around other cars and forcing issues. But, I mean, over 28 laps, he still gained 6.5 seconds on himself. So that's actually a pretty good indicator that he's got speed when things are good. Brad Keselowski, $8,000 starting in 20th. He was 17th in single lap, 15th in 10-lap consecutive average. I think he might improve a little bit in his starting spot, but it's not. I think he's probably at best a 12th place car for tomorrow, because there's just nothing in any of the data, and he just really takes off. Both in his times really fall off or increase very quickly in a run, which makes me think that the car's got some ill handling characteristics going on. Because I mean, he gets well into the 29-second range by lap 24. So that's an indication that that car is really not handling well. Now, temperature change tomorrow may end up helping that, but this is something I don't really like to see. This line's too steep, too quick. They've got some work to do. Alex Bowman at $7,800, starting in 32nd. He's another one who just kind of like Ty Gibbs, just messed his qualifying lap up. Just overshot entry into, I think it was turn 1, and he pushed up a little bit in turn 3 and 4. Starting in 32nd, so maybe his 15th fastest lap and 21st 10-lap consecutive average may come into play, and we can get Alex Bowman into a top 20, top 15 range, because honestly, that's really all it's going to take. So starting in 32nd, let's pull out our little handy-dandy thing here, and let's go 32nd. We haven't used this yet today. 32nd, and he gets to 15th. And let's say he's got 2 fast laps. Well, that's 53.9 points. Well, if you remember back from the optimal lineups, 53.9 puts him right smack dab in the optimal lineup. So definitely the Alex Bowman play is in play. Let's look at his lap speeds. Look at, once again, it's not super steep. They kind of follow each other very, very well, very consistent, very well balanced. All of the Hendrick cars have all shown this in their lap speeds. Now, Kyle Larson had a huge amount of gain on that soft tire where, Alex Bowman might be the worst of the 4, but he still had a 3.139 second gain over 29 laps. So, like I said, I really think there is something to this just nice, even flow that's not too steep and it's not too jagged. So, I think Alex Bowman is definitely somebody that we can keep an eye on and put him into play. Josh Berry at $7,600. Like I said, this track style fits Josh Berry to a T. I think he overqualified. I think on the top end, he is lucky that if he'll get to a top 5. Richmond and Phoenix run very, very similar. Josh Berry has always run really well at Phoenix, especially when he's qualified well. The problem is when he qualified well, he also practiced well. His practice speeds were not very good. 34th in single lap, 28th in 10-lap consecutive average. His average finish is 20. Now, his sample size is not very large. It's only 20. Let's look. Hold on one second. I wanted to look at that real quick. We can go look at his trend line at like tracks. Similar tracks. So this would include Richmond and Iowa and Nashville. Josh Berry has an 18.9 average finish at those other tracks. He only's got 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 4 top 15s, 5 top 20s. So not super great. It'll be interesting to see what type of speed on the short track that the Wood Brothers 21 car has. Now, it's also a Penske sister car, and maybe that comes into play. But let's look at Josh's practice speeds. It's his option tire looked pretty good. Got a couple little jags here, but it doesn't go up super severe. Kind of keeps a nice trajectory up. He ran 37, 36 laps on this option tire. You got to remember, Josh Berry, coming from the late model series and the Cars Tour, wasn't called the Cars Tour back then, but those guys are the absolute best when it comes to managing tire wear. So I just don't love where Josh Berry is starting in 4th. I think he ends up at more like a 15th to 18th. Well, it's heading in the wrong direction. So I I'm going to fade off of Josh Berry just because he's starting too far up. Once again, he's going to be super low owned. I don't think anybody's going to trust it. So, Matt, if you're looking for that sneaky pick, you can go with Josh Berry. I think Austin Cindric is a really, really good sneaky pick. 7,500, starting in 14th. Penske's always good here. Ryan Blaney's good here. Joe Logano's good here in the fall on even years. But whatever, that's for another time. Now, his average finish here is only 24th. So it has not been very good or very kind to Austin Cindric. But Austin Cindric getting that 50-point deduction from last week has really put him deep, deep, deep in a hole, and he's going to need to run good, solid races from here on out and get that win. He won at Iowa. No, he won at Nashville. And Nashville runs, it's similar in some ways, but it's a concrete track. It's so hard to pass. Can some of these guys starting up front hold the top 10? Yeah. And it's actually, with this option tire, is going to allow the comer and goers. It's going to allow people to get up and pass. And that's going to be the fun, interesting thing, because, I mean, if you have a Ryan Blaney who's got the primary tire and you've got a Kyle Larson on an option tire, he's absolutely going to eat Ryan Blaney's lunch, at least for the first 30 to 45 laps. Now, how quickly or how easily can a Ryan Blaney get back around somebody with an old, worn-out option tire? I don't know. And that's always kind of the fun part. And it also gets a little more tricky, because if you can't lay the horsepower down, it does get very tough to pass. We'll see passing tomorrow. The option tire is going to give us that. I would actually have liked to see the option tire get even softer. I think these tires should run really, really well for 30 to 40 laps. And if you abuse them or beat them up at all, you're going to pay the price. If you took care of them, you might be able to get to 60, 65 laps. And then you're going to have to come in and throw tires on. I hate tires that last 100, 120 laps. I think it's dumb. That's just my personal opinion, though. Austin Cindric, I mean, super consistent, a little jagged, but not awful. Does get into the 29-second range towards the end of the long run on the option tire, but pretty consistent between the two. Not a huge leap between them. So I think Austin Cindric is definitely somebody who could be a sleeper pick tomorrow, and it's definitely somebody that could be in play. Bubba Wallace, really consistent, good practice laps. 12th in single lap, 6th in 10-lap consecutive average. He's got a 13.8 average finish here. For not finishing in the top 5 ever, he's got a really good, consistent average finish of 13.8. He finished 7th here in the fall race last year. Definitely somebody that we could keep an eye on. He did not gain or lose much at all, and neither did Tyler Reddick. So the 2311 cars really did not have huge gains with the option tire, but they still fired off fairly fast. But they were very equal between the two. So definitely kind of something to keep an eye on is, even if they happen to have the primary tire, can they keep up with, a Kyle Larson who seemed to be very, very quick on the option tire? It'll be interesting to see how big of a difference it is in race form. Because in practice it's a little different. People are more willing to be like, okay, I've got 30 laps on my tire, you're on 2 laps, I'm going to let you go because I'm just going to get in your way. So everybody's a lot more gentlemanly during practice. Daniel Suarez, $7,100, starting in 31st. Practice speeds were in about that 30th in single lap, 20th in 10-lap consecutive average. 16th place average finish for the last 5 races here at Phoenix. So not super great. So never finished in the top 5 in any of the races. 15.9. So, I mean, 31st to 15th. I mean, once again, if we go back and look at our handy dandy little chart here, yeah, you go to 31st. It's one spot different. Get up to 15th. I mean, it's 52.9. I mean, it puts you right in that ballpark. You know, even if you fall to 17th, it's 48.9. That gets you real close to being in the optimal lineup. Now, can Daniel Suarez get to his average finish? Maybe. Remember, at Richmond, he was one of the few people to go and put the soft tires on really early in the race, and he made up a ton of track position, and from that point on was able to hold strong in that position. In fact, where did Daniel finish that race? Let me pull that up real quick. Hold on. Cup. Some more tracks. Short tracks. I think that was the spring Richmond race that he did that. I've got the fall race. That's where Austin Dillon won. We always go to Racing Reference. Sorry, I was thinking about this earlier and completely forgot to look. Previous year. This is a great site for looking back at history. Was it the spring race they had the option tire? Where is... Sorry, Daniel Suarez 22nd. And he didn't lead any laps, so it must have been the fall race. So the next at this track, yeah, it was the fall race. They ran the option tire, and Daniel Suarez finished in 10th, led 93 laps. What was his practice speeds like? So he started in 21st, and he was 9th in practice. But don't know if that was on option tires or not. But that kind of gives us an interesting indication on what Daniel was doing, and I missed it. Okay. Sorry. I meant to go check on that earlier. But yeah, so I mean, Daniel Suarez finished in 10th in the fall race here at Phoenix. He finished 9th at the fall race in Richmond with the option tire. Starting in 31st, I think Daniel could easily, as long as he doesn't get caught up in somebody else's stuff like he has all year so far. He's had some really bad luck. I think, Daniel Suarez and both Alex Bowman are definitely in play. Now, remember, they're going to be in play. And if we look at, nice and consistent between the option tire and the primary tire. He barely got to 29 seconds on the option tire, even at lap 30. So he had a 7.8 gain on 33 laps. Pretty consistent. So Daniel Suarez definitely, I think, is in play as much as Alex Bowman is. Carson Hocevar. Carson Hocevar is going to be lucky to be 1% owned tomorrow. I think he was like 3% owned in the Coda race. Because I said he qualified too far up, and he definitely fell towards the back. So definitely got that one right. And I think the same thing's going to happen. Now, he was fastest in practice, but that's a little caveated. Option tire, first driver out, brand new green clean track. You can run the fastest lap. It's just there's that much of a difference until the rubber gets laid down. You can easily run very quick laps. And this is kind of what I'm talking about, is he's all over the board on speeds. Yeah, he had the fast lap here, but if you take that one lap out, his next lap starts here, and it's very jagged. It's kind of all over the board. So I think Carson Hocevar is going to be a little inconsistent. And starting in third, we've got some guys who are much faster here who still have bones to pick with Carson Hocevar, and there's no better place to get somebody back other than a short track mile or less in length. So I think Carson might get eaten up. Noah Gragson. Carson Hocevar has a way to stay under the radar when he's running in like 15th and can just run in 15th all day long. And then all of a sudden he finishes in the top 10 in Draftkings points. And everybody's like, where did that come from? Never even saw him all day. It's because he kept his nose clean and didn't piss anybody off. Well, he's already pissed people off so far this year. Noah Gragson in the number 4 car, great crew chief with Rodney Childress, who was Kevin Harvick's old crew chief, who set up all those wins here at Phoenix for Kevin Harvick. Noah Gragson was 16th and 16th. His average finish is 17.7, but he goes out and qualifies and blew the qualifying lap up, and he's going to start in 33rd. I think Noah Gragson ends up being probably lower owned than Alex Bowman. Probably will kind of fall in the same ballpark as Daniel Suarez. But starting in 33rd, he's going to get some ownership. So I definitely think Noah Gragson is definitely a play because of the place differential. And I think having Rodney Childress as your crew chief is definitely going to help. Is it? I do have that right? Is Childress his crew chief? Cup 25. Crew chiefs. The 4. Bob Jenkins is the owner. Drew Birkenster, just Blick and Sturfer, very tough. Rodney Childress? Oh, Rodney's with Justin Haley. So I mean, Justin Haley could end up having a pretty good day because of that. Rodney Childress sets up a amazing race car. Pretty consistent, but he definitely jumped up pretty quick, but he never really got to 29 seconds. Now, he never really got much past about 30 laps, but starting in 33rd, I don't mind taking Noah Gragson. Plenty of place differential. Ryan Preece, also from SHR, he was not very good in practice. He was not very good at qualifying, so a little concerned. Out of all the 4 drivers from SHR that were with SHR before, Ryan Preece is probably my least favorite, and he's starting in 28th. So I don't love it. He's got a 21.5 average finish over the last 5 races. Out of everybody coming out of RFK Racing, I like Chris Buescher probably the best, and Brad and Ryan are going to fight for bottom of the barrel. And he's kind of just all over the place with his practice speeds. In fact, going almost to 30 seconds at the end of a run. So I will probably fade off of Ryan Preece. Michael McDowell. You want to talk about most consistent and fastest in practice? Michael McDowell. And if you remember back to the optimal lineups, Michael McDowell was in, I think, 3 of the 4 or 2 of the 4 optimal lineups for Phoenix. He's got an average finish of 17.2. Now, the part that kind of worries me a little bit is starting in 7th, but I think Michael McDowell easily starts in 7th and finishes 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there. But that's one of those. You can start up front, finish up front, finish in the top 10 at 6,500. Remember that price range that we needed to get to? We had to find 2 drivers down here in this range, and Michael McDowell easily could be that driver. He also did 68 total laps of practice. And if we look at his, I mean, this is a nice, a little bit steep right through here, but it really starts to kind of flatten out through here. And in 20 laps, he gained 11 seconds. Now, he went out on the same lap with Carson Hocevar, who both blistered their first lap. As you can see, by the second lap, he fell off to here. But Michael McDowell starting up front could easily finish up front. Whereas Eric Jones, Yeah, not so much. This one scares me as much as Carson Hocevar. Starting in 5th, practice speeds were okay, 8th and 14th. But his average finishes here are 21.6 over the last 5 races, 17.7 average finish total. And his practice speeds, I mean, pretty consistent following the same type of line, but it really is steep in that first 10 laps, and then it kind of flattens out a little bit. I think Eric Jones is starting way too far up front for my liking. So he and Carson Hocevar are definitely two that I will pass. Cole Custer, 6,300. Cole has won here at Phoenix in the Xfinity Series. So a little caveat there, but he typically has run fairly well here. He had a 16th place finish. Is that in 2022 in the fall? 18.8 average finish for 6 total starts in the Cup Series. I don't know what his average finish is for the Xfinity Series, but he always ran it well. So I could go back and look at the data, but starting in 23rd, this could be somebody who could easily fly under the radar. And I don't think he gets super high up there. I think he, if everything kind of falls right, he gets a 16th place finish. Well, 16th place finish starting, what did it say, 23rd? 23rd, finish 17th, that's 40.9. Well, you're at your price of 6,300, that falls in that sweet spot. Because you could run a 65 and a 6,300 guy, and you can start to put in and afford a Ryan Blaney and a Christopher Bell together. So, his speeds were a little jagged, a little more inconsistent than I'd like to see. But he did have a pretty good gain over 17 laps. Like I said, a little concerned that it's so jagged. I like to see it much more fluid. But it does stay fairly flat. I mean, 27.5 to 28.7. So about a second, 1.2 second fall off. Shane Van Gisbergen, 6,200, starting in 29th. I honestly, Shane could easily do well if this becomes an attrition style race, but typically Phoenix does not. I think Shane could probably work his way up to, I think, best of like a 18th, 19th in 10 spots. Maybe that fits. 29th to, what did I say, 29th to 19th? 29th to 19th. I mean, that puts him right there with Cole Custer on getting up there. Let's say he has 0 fast laps. So 41 points. I mean, that's still in the ballpark. So he and Cole Custer, if you want to potentially look at somebody who might be under-owned and might go under the radar, Shane typically is one of those, he doesn't try to put, unless it's on a road course, he doesn't push the issue. He's still learning these tracks, learning how to race these ovals, and is just become a student of learning how to drive the ovals. And he's a sponge. He picks it up pretty quick. So typically by the end of a race, if he can keep his nose clean and keep his car clean, he'll show up and have a decent finish. Do I think it's going to be a top 10? No, probably not. But could it be 15th through 19th? Sure. If that's the case, he's 40 points. And pretty consistent. I mean, he had these 2 laps here that kind of went off the rails, but very consistent, very good tire wear and managed. Now, they're not super fast laps, but they're just good management of tire wear until about lap 20. But that first 10 laps, they show a pretty good, consistent line. So I think Shane is definitely in play. AJ Allmendinger, I think, probably finishes where he starts, if that. He did finish 6th in the fall race last year, and he does have an average finish of 18.4 or 17.6. He wasn't super fast in practice, so I think he kind of outkicked his starting spot a little bit. But kind of the same thing as Shane. Just good, consistent trajectory on his lap times with both the option and the primary tire. Like I said, that's something I really like to see. He's got a couple little jags in there, but nothing abnormal. And kind of just follows a good path. So, other than AJ's starting spot, Justin Haley, who we just went and looked, has Rodney Childress as his crew chief. The Spire cars fired off extremely quick. They all have qualified in the top 10. Justin Haley starting in 8th. I don't love Justin Haley's average finishes, though, at Phoenix. So a little bit concerned there. And if you can see, he's all over speed-wise when it comes to practice. Super fast, super slow, super fast, super slow. I don't love that consistency out of Justin, so that has me a little bit worried starting in 8th. I probably will fade off of Justin Haley. Riley Herbst starting in 18th. Riley won 4 months ago in the Xfinity Series here at Phoenix. Now, he's also still learning this next-gen car, but, I mean, definitely something to keep an eye on. I think at 5,900, starting in 18th, what does that give us? Starting in 18th, you definitely don't want to lose a spot. Let's say he gains 2 spots to 16th. Well, that's 37. That's not quite as good as Cole Custer and SVG if they can get up to 16th, but Riley's also starting better. Riley also has a more historical, better finish, at least in the Xfinity Series at Phoenix, so he knows how to get around. Riley could easily be somebody who gets overlooked because he's starting a little further up than a lot of people probably would like to take. It's kind of like what we just saw with Justin Haley. Big ups and downs on some of these lap times. Now this one here, I mean, it's literally 1 lap. That could have easily been an issue on the track in front of him or something. Now, his primary tire speed looks nice and consistent. His option tire doesn't look great. So, a little inconsistent there. We'll have to see how he does in the race. Austin Dillon starting in 21st. He was 23rd in single lap, 22nd in 10 lap, 20th place average finish. Only has 2 top 10s out of 22 total starts, and starting in 21st. I know that Family Man Matt and I have talked about Austin Dillon. I just think he's kind of starting a little too far up from me. If he were starting 28th, 29th, 30th, I might have some interest, but starting in 21st, I'm not sure it gets much better from there. And he's got a huge gap between his option tire and his primary tire. Now, this race could end up playing a little bit like what we saw in the fall race at Richmond, which had the option tire, which Austin Dillon won and then didn't win. He still gets credited for the win, but had the playoff stripped because he took out Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin. But he was also very, very quick in that race. So, something to maybe keep an eye on. Do we still have that? Let's see. Let's go back to that race again. Actually, I've got it here. Similar tracks, fall, Richmond, Austin Dillon. He started in 6th, finished in 1st. So he started much better in that race. So, yeah, I think I would have needed to seen something out of either practice or qualifying for Austin Dillon for me to have much of interest. So I'm not sure we get much of an improvement from starting position. So I'll probably fade off of there. Todd Gillen, starting 27th, practice 27th in speed, 33rd in 10 lap consecutive average. Pretty much has an average of 25.6 right there at his starting spot. I think we see what we're going to get with Todd Gillen. A little steep on the speed fall off, a little more than I would like to see. And he gets way into the 29s really quickly. So kind of like what with Brad Keselowski, just really kind of burning off those tires much faster than I'd like to see. So I think there's a little something going on with the handling of that car. Zane Smith, 5,500, starting in 26th. 25th in single lap, 12th in 10 lap consecutive average. A pretty good 10 lap consecutive average there for Zane Smith. His average finishes are awful. 33rd. He finished 39th in the fall of last year. But, I mean, this is a little consistent. We get a little hiccup here at about lap 19. A little jagged coming through here, but keeps it fairly equal between the two. So not overly concerned with this, but we've seen better. But I don't mind it. And starting 26th, I think you could take some shots on Zane if we're looking for a really, really cheap option. And I think this is about as low as you go. John Hunter Nemechek at 5,300. I don't know what was going on here because he had the 10th fastest single lap and then fell off to 36th in 10 lap consecutive average. And he really does not have any good finishes here. And if we look, I mean, his practice speeds are all over the place. I could not make hide or hair on. This was the best guess I could come with the option tire. But none of his practice speeds made any sense whatsoever. So take that for what you can. In fact, I'll show you. Here's all the practice speeds. It was a John Hunter. Yeah, I mean, here's John Hunter's speeds. So he comes in for a long time in the pits, but he fired off at 27.5 and fell to 28.1. And I think that was the option tire. He comes in for a really long time, 673 seconds. I don't know what that ends up being. That's 10 minutes, almost 11 minutes. And he goes back out, and he's not very fast. 28.1, 27.9, 28.9. So I figured that this grouping was his option tire, and then this was his primary tire. But all of these laps could be just all primary, and he never got to the option tire. But why he did that, I don't ever remember hearing why he only had 39 laps of practice. So a little concerning on the amount of laps that he had there, and he only qualified in 36. I mean, that might as well be last, because the only other one is the lady, Kelly. No, what is her name? Catherine Liggy. We'll get to her in a second. But you could take some shots on John Hunter Nemechek in 36th. Maybe potential of some upside. But, I mean, if he just hits his average finish, that's not going to be enough, even at 5,300. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I think, starts too far up in 22nd. He's only got one top 20 in the last 5 races here. He's only finished in the top 5 once out of 24 races, twice in the top 10, and an 18.8 average finish. And his practice speeds were, once again, all over the place. Very inconsistent, very ragged. He was fast, and then he was slow, and then he was all over. When I see these types of graphs, that's when I go, ooh, we had some handling issues, and we're making some pretty big swings and adjustments. So, Ty Dillon starting in 25th, way outkicked his coverage for qualifying. 36th in single lap practice, 34th in 10 lap consecutive average. And this is what I'm talking about. This is just massive swings. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Very ill handling car to have that type of that jaggedness. That's concerning. So starting in 25th, I think it's starting too far back. If he were starting 36, maybe, but he's starting too far up, in my opinion. Cody Ware starting in 35th. His practice speeds were 35th and 35th. And he was a little bit all over the place too. So, and that's why Cody Ware's as cheap as he is, because he's all over the place. Best of luck. I think between he and Ty Dillon and a couple others and Catherine's only goal tomorrow is to finish the race. And she's not going to be concerned if she finishes 37th. It's literally just go get laps in this car. Learn what you can. When you have an opportunity to race. I mean, she never pitted a cup car. She never raced a cup car. She never raced an Xfinity car. The only other stock car that she's ever raced in her life is ARCA, and that was a Daytona, and that didn't turn out well. So, yeah, nope. Even a 4500, starting at 37th, I'm fading off of that one super fast. All right, getting towards the end here. Told you there was just a ton of data, and it took me hours to wrap my head around it, and I still can't make hide or hair of it. So there is that. But I've now given you guys all the data that I possibly can, and hopefully it helps. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We're not shooting blind, but I'm not really sure what we're shooting at. So I think it still goes back to who historically runs well here, who historically doesn't run well here, and do any of those match up with practice speeds? And they're out here. I mean, Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, William Byron, but they're all $10,000 or more. So you can pair one or two of these up, but you're gonna have to find some cheap guys. I mean, Ross Chastain, once again, he's 8,800. Alex Bowman, 7,800, but they're also going to be pretty heavily owned. Along with Daniel Suarez starting in 31st at 7,100, but we've got that starts to give us a little bit of salary relief at 7,100. Chase Briscoe at 9,000, I think almost too expensive at this point, and he's going to be super heavily owned, in my personal opinion. He might not be, but I think he's going to be pretty heavily owned. And realistically, I don't really love anybody starting in the top 10. I think you try to fit as many potential dominators in and punt to make it fit. Andrew, I mean, I think it's going to go back to. I don't mean to make everybody really. Here, I'll just move this over here for a second. Because me scrolling back will make you dizzy if I do it on screen. Let's go back to the optimal lineups again. That way you guys can have a better idea again. So, the fall race, 10,000, 10,000. Then we had a group of 7,000s and then a group of 6,000s. 10,000 and 9,800, 8,000s, and then punt into the high fives, low six, or mid six. Same thing. 11,000, 11,000, 8, 8, 58, and 5. 11, 98, 90, 84, 58, 54. So, yes, you're going to have to probably, but you're not necessarily going for dominators. It's two potential dominators / two finishing positions. Is kind of where I'm kind of thinking that this is going to end up landing. So, I mean, a William Byron definitely is in play starting from the pole. Here, I'm going to go back to the other. Move this again so I don't drive you guys crazy. Spinning them all through here. All right, I'll pull this back over. I think you try to fit two of these guys in here. A Bell and a Blaney, a Byron and a Larson. I think you just mix and match this grouping here. Two out of this group. I think you're then looking for two out of this group. A Ross, an Alex Bowman, a Chris Buescher. I don't love the Brad Keselowski play. Briscoe or Suarez. I don't. If you're fitting in this highest owned group that I have up here, which I kind of think are going to be what I think finishes close to the top 5. I don't love anybody under Joey Logano, really. Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, I'm okay with. Don't love it for their price. But realistically, so you're looking at 2 from here, 2 from here, and probably 2 from this grouping here. So maybe a Shane or a Noah, Austin Cindric, The Daniel Suarez play is definitely in play at 7,100. It's a nice, cheap option. Lots of place differential. He needs to start having good finishes and being consistent. If you don't hit the Dominators, you are probably dead in the water. Oh, yeah, you don't hit at least one of the Dominators, yeah, you're sunk. There's too many Dominator points. 140 Dominator points for this race. Yeah, you've got to have Dominators. I mean, let's just think about it. Let's just take William Byron starting in first. Let's go back to our little handy dandy chart. Points. Start from the pole and finish. Let's say even finishes third. But he leads 154 laps and has 25 fast laps. I mean, even finishing first to third, that's 88 points. That's huge. He could fall to 10th and still have 70. He could fall all the way to 15th and still have 71 points. So yeah, you've got to hit the Dominator. I mean, even at $10,000-$11,000, the pole position's in play. So yeah, William Byron's in play. All these guys are in play. All these guys have historical data that they lead laps and have fast laps at Phoenix, and all of their practice speeds showed that they've got great speed. I think Michael McDowell, actually at 6,500, is a really, really good sneaky play. And he may or may not get overlooked because he was really fast in practice. But starting in 7th, people may not realize that Michael McDowell is actually very consistent at Phoenix. So, hopefully that helps you out, guys. It's going to take a lot of time to build some lineups. So if you're hand building your lineups and you're really trying to go through a thorough breakdown of your lineups, give yourself a little bit of extra time to kind of go through and really work and massage the lineups a little bit. This is not a quick plug and play like we'll see at road courses or super speedways. This one gets a little bit more complex, but it could easily be well worth it. And be willing to take some shots and some risks, strategic shots and risks. Like I really don't like the Carson Hocevar play. I would take the Josh Berry play before I took the Carson Hocevar play. Who was the other one I really didn't like? Oh, Eric Jones, and I would take Justin Haley before I took Eric Jones. The Eric Jones play scares me. The Carson Hocevar play scares me. I think Josh Berry could have a top 10 finish, but it's asking a lot out of the Wood brothers. But it's also coming from Penske. So, sneaky play that could get a 2.5-3% ownership would be Josh Berry. So I'll probably end up having 5% lineup with 5% of my lineups with Josh Berry in it, but it's gonna be, yeah, it'll be with some place differentials. It'll be probably like with a William Byron, a Josh Berry, Daniel Suarez type of lineup. So I don't think I will start much more than 2 guys starting in the top 10. Let's see if I can find this sheet also. I think I showed it to you guys last week. We're looking at road courses. Here it is, my top 15 chart for Phoenix. Phoenix. Top 15 points. We've got a first, a third, an 8th, a 5th, and a 9th. First and second, Joe Logano and Ryan Blaney in 2022. A third, an 8th, a 7th. So, I mean, we have a pretty consistent amount of guys starting in the top 10 that make the top 15 and maybe even the top 10 in DraftKings points. 2, second place start, sixth place start, first, ninth, and an eighth. I mean, here's Michael McDowell. Michael McDowell fell down to here. Michael McDowell's down here, and then up here. But I mean, Michael McDowell started 7th, finished 13th in this race. Started 20th and finished 25th. 35th to 31st. 9th and 8th. 19th and 9th. Now, none of these races had option tires. So back to your point earlier that it's really hard to pass here, it is, but with the option tire, it becomes a little bit less of an issue. So that's all I've got for you guys. I mean, at this point, how long? An hour and 30. It's honestly, when I was talking to my wife earlier, I said this is going to be at least an hour and a half. Just because there's just so much more data that we had to kind of drill down on. Everybody else, if you don't live in Arizona, times change tonight. Spring those clocks forward. We get some extra daylight later in the day. Really doesn't change the amount of daylight you actually have. The Earth rotation does that, and the angle it changes. Besides that, not the clocks, but we do get the extra hour later, but we lose an hour of sleep tonight. So make sure you get some good rest. Spend a little bit of time massaging those lineups for tomorrow, and hopefully somebody can take home a bag. If it's not me, hopefully it's one of you guys. But either way, we go to Vegas next week. We're on the West Coast swing. That probably will be an absolute Kyle Larson domination. It has been for quite a few of the races recently at Las Vegas. So be fully prepared for Kyle Larson for next week. But we'll see how he practices. You never know. Next week, hopefully I'll be back live at 9 o'clock. I don't know what time the Xfinity race is. Might be a later race because... Yeah, let's look real quick. I could tell you. Xfinity 25. Does this have the date or the time on it? 4:30 p.m. So 4:30 Eastern. 5:36. Yeah, I should be able to get plenty of time to get everything ready and in for 9 o'clock. A start for next week. All right, 9 o'clock next week. I should be back live with you again. If anybody hits in any of your big lineups or bets or anything like that, let me know. Always love to celebrate success, especially if it's something we happen to have discussed on here. But everybody, good luck. Like I said, take your time, massage those lineups. It'll be well worth it. Have a great weekend and good luck. Thanks. Bye. Oh, hit that like and subscribe button.
Take a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W's, so got to be around at the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby!
Hell yeah.
Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day.
Great work, my man. Great work. Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
Great job, guys. Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal and got it here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away.
Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job.
Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.